Okay, in this video, I am going to talk a little bit about further use of the interface and something called parenting. Okay, so first off, we saw this video earlier, and this is our spaceman, and he is traveling along this thing here. If you come down to this window over here, you're going to see something down at the very bottom where it says toggle switches and modes. So if I click on that, you'll see that things change what we have access to, where we have something here called modes. These are track mats, which we'll discuss later. These are different tools here, but I want you to see one that says parent and link. And you're not going to see that sometimes, depending on how you have it set up. I've used mine before, so mine automatically shows up. So parenting and then link, and then you have these little icons here, which are called pick whips. So you can kind of click on them and point to other things with it. So that's kind of one of the things that we're going to be doing in a little bit here. But what I want to do as far as that's concerned is to show you something called parenting. Okay, so in parenting, what that means is you have the think of this as the parent and the child relationship. So the other thing about After Effects, if you did not know, is that whatever is inside your assets in your project window, you can use those things as many times as you want. So if I take this out, I can have I can have as many of these instances of these spacemen as you want. And so you can kind of see here that there's two of them right now. And just so that it's not confusing, let's go ahead and rename this one. I'm holding down the control button. I'm saying rename. And then I'm going to just change that from spaceman to spaceman parent. And this other one, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm holding down the control button, go down to rename, and then I'm going to say this one is the child. Okay, so now it's a good idea to name these things as you go along, because you will find that you will have many different instances of similar things, and it's really kind of easy to kind of get lost with what you have here. And there's a way to manage that as well with this little shy guy here, which we will talk about later on also. But for now, I want to stick to parenting. Okay, so here is my child, and I wanted to make it smaller. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to twirl down to my basic transformations, and I have opacity, which if I drag this down, you can see I can make him less opaque. I can rotate him around. I can change the position of him. And the anchor point refers to this little doohickey here. So like if I was to rotate this, for example, it's going to rotate around that anchor point. So you can move those anchor points, and there are reasons why you might want to do that. Typically, when we are doing these basic transformations, we stay away from anchor point at this point until you know a little bit more about After Effects. But for now, what I want to do is have the child, let's make it even smaller so he looks like a child. I want this child to move around the parent. So the parent is going to go where the parent wants to go. And the child is, like a child, is following the parent wherever it goes, but it's doing its own thing simultaneously. Okay, so what you do is you take this child and you go to the parent link, and I'm going to take this pick whip and I'm going to bring it over to where it says the parent. Okay, so now you can see here that this is where it is associated with that particular layer here. So now when it goes, you can see that it's married to the parent, and it's moving as along it without creating a whole new set of keyframes, which is kind of cool. All right, but what I want to do is just now the child can do its own thing at the same time. So let's go ahead and animate the position and maybe the rotation. So just by turning on those keyframes, I have now activated the animation. And I want these keyframes actually to be at the very beginning. Okay, so let's go ahead, and with those, I'm going to make. Oh, the other thing about these keyframes here is if I were to move this, notice that what it just did is it created another keyframe. I don't want that other keyframe. Just know that the more keyframes you have, the more likelihood things can get kind of sloppy and messy, and you start to lose control of things. So by hitting this little arrow here, what this does is that it automatically snaps to the next keyframe. So if you're just dragging it along and you think you put it on top of the keyframe, Depending on how big you've got this thing zoomed in and out, this thing down here will zoom in and out. It may or may not be really sitting on top of it. So when you think you're actually doing something, it may not be doing it. So I'm going to snap, and this is blue over here right now, so it's actually sitting on this keyframe. I'm going to deactivate that. So now I just got rid of that keyframe. Okay. And so what I want to do is I want to put this, have the playhead on this keyframe, and I'm going to just move this guy over here. And so as we move through time, and the parent comes over here, I want this character to travel around the parent. So notice I am moving the playhead in time and then moving my object. Why am I doing that? I am doing that because if you just moved it from there to there, it would not make more keyframes and it would not appear to move. So by doing this, it will move along with it. So now what you'll see is as the, let me hit play, as it's going through time, the child is now following the parent, but it's doing its own thing simultaneously. Now let's go back a little bit here and notice that there's a lot of dots over here and there's a lot less dots over here on this motion path. And so that's meaning that it's going slower here, it speeds up, and it's going really fast as it travels from this key point. These are representations. Notice when I click on that key point, the key point over here turns blue. So these are representative of the keyframes that exist on your timeline. Okay, so and if you want these, so like right here we're seeing a lot of dots. If you want to slow it down, all you have to do is move that keyframe further in time, and you can see now there's a lot more dots there. So you can also multiple select and move them at the same time. And so now I kind of want to have more or less the same sort of time in between each one. So I'm going to just kind of move these out so that the number of frames it takes to move is more or less the same from keyframe to keyframe. So let's see what that's looking like. Okay, and that is parenting. Okay, and it doesn't seem like, you know, how often would I actually need to have a spaceman spinning around this, but it goes a lot further than that, because you can use it for text. If your text is moving around, you can use anything as a parent. If you have any kind of motion, anything that you animate, wherever you see a stopwatch in After Effects means that that property is animatable. And I would say that 90% of all the things that you can do in After Effects are animatable. And so this is really important to understand, because then this parenting will mean a whole lot more as you are starting to create animations.